The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
And we on?
You're on, Chip.
Hello, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
I'm Carlos, and CJ
And
on the way.
CJ is hopping over. Wait a minute. He's got his official...
There he is.
Look, he made it.
We had a technical glitch.
Yeah. Now, isn't it nice? This is what we call irony, because for the last, I don't know how many shows, I've been complaining to CJ when he was in the control room. I getting my eardrums blown off during the introduction, and now he had to listen to it. So guess what? I bet you it gets fixed now.
Well, no, it's not that. The opening didn't show on the screen, but it was playing, obviously, because of the music. So we have to figure out what happened there. And I think I identified that because it was playing the sound file, it wasn't playing the video file. And it should have played the video file instead of the sound file.
So it's still your fault.
It's still my fault because, again, we have to set that up so that it automatically plays because we've automated the system. So, but let's get right to the show. First thing I want to talk about is market rate housing.
Oh, yeah, well.
Market rate housing. It has been reported that the Curtin Mill apartments, as many of you know, that's located along, what is that, Quequechan Street in Jefferson there,
No,
is now...
It's near the split.
Yeah, it's right at the
Quequechan
split.
and Quarry.
Quequechan and Quarry.
Yeah.
And they're now moving in from all over God's great creation, Section 8 housing certificates. Now, if I remember correctly, Chip, you and I spoke about this several times, and they received TIFs, they received special financing, all for market rate housing. That means rents that are like $700, $800, $900, $1,000, $2,700, and now it's all going to become Section 8. And people are making a mass exodus from the reports I received yesterday on getting out of that building. They don't want to live there. I wonder why.
Well, CJ, don't I remember you just going in front of the council a while back about the new housing with the same kind of provisos? And,
Yes.
And didn't we go through this, well, how many years was that, 20 years ago with Point Gloria? I mean, how long ago? Point Gloria was decades ago, and the same thing happened. And you know, this is what we were talking about when we talk about don't listen to the propaganda and the Kool-Aid, because, again, the same people sitting in the city council were there for all this market housing, and they vote for it. And they have to accept the consequences to their actions, regardless of who they are. And some of these have voted for 5, 6, 7 different things like this with TIFs. And, you know, you can say what you want. If somebody's got a record, then you can judge them. If somebody's never been in a position, you have to go on what they say they will do. And as we said, you know, you pick who you think is the best candidate, or the lesser of two evils, and then you hold them. But the key is you hold them to live up to their promises. Promises are like, you know, promises are like words without deeds are worthless weeds. Well, promises without the keeping of those promises are worthless too. Politicians are notorious for making promises. But what is to me more deplorable, because when they're running for office, they all lie. It's up to us to determine, you know, if they, you know, sometimes you can't because they haven't been in office, but you put them in office. And as I said, you throw them out if they don't. But what disturbs me is when we have people and mayors who have been doing this, not for a year, not for 2, not for 3, but for decades, and then they try to lie to the people of Fall River and tell everybody how good things are getting, and every time one of these housing units comes up and they give it a tiff to one of the rich people who are going to, because they don't care. They don't care who occupies those houses. As a matter of fact, they like Section 8 because they're guaranteed high rents. And this is what's really upsetting to me, that when you're a kid and you walk over to the stove and you put your hand on it and you burn your hand, most kids, don't do that again. And if they do it again, they have to take them to a doctor. But the city of Fall River, we're still listening to the same bullshit arguments to justify TIFs and building these things and bringing more low-income people in. And then we can't figure out why we have one of the highest percentages of people living below the poverty level. We keep doing this, we're going to be not number 2, we're going to be number 1.
And you guys making me nervous because we have a building, the 69 Alden Street is going to be turned into another 113 apartments. And they are on the license on the state now to get those that help. And when I got approached by them for support, I didn't support them until we got into an agreement that they only rented into 55 and older. When they came down to the city for license, they increased the age. When I was asking 55, because right next door was a building that we're talking about, it's only 55. They agreed to, for 40 years, not to rent to anybody younger than 65. So they went 10 years up. So we have that in an agreement, okay? And now that we changed the governor, I had to redo the letter of support. And that letter just went up probably 4 months ago.
So it's your fault.
Okay, so now you're making me nervous because, wait a minute.
It's your fault.
Wait a minute.
It's your fault.
I want to make sure it's only 55.
No, hold on a second, because you didn't tell them no Section 8. You didn't tell them no low income. So what's going to happen is they're going to make it 65 years old, and they're going to give them all what's now, because this is something else that happened in Fall River. Yes, people, something else happened. The Housing Authority opened up the application process for housing choice vouchers. Again, another low-income program. And guess what? That means more people from out of the city come here to live here.
The agreement, CJ, was no low income, okay, no Section 8s, and it will be just for 55 and older. When they came around, then they had another 10 years. And now we're 65. And this is public record. If you go to the meetings, you will find that, because I was there to support.
But Carlos, the law, remember, I don't care what your agreement says, because you know what? The law says that they can have low-income housing. And I presented this to the City Council on the Commonwealth Landing proposal. All right? Who, by the way, none of the owners of Commonwealth Landing are currently in Fall River. They're all vacationing like they do probably every other week down in Florida, and they post galore that they're always in Florida. That's how much they love Fall River. They don't stay here, they go to Florida. But I said very clearly, with this deal, they only have to have 10% or 50 units, whichever is lower, designated as market rate. The rest of them can be low income. And that's exactly what it says in the law. And I presented the law to the City Council, saying, oh no, there's no market rate. Well, you know what? They told us there was going to be no low income because it was market rate for Point Gloria. Those are condos we're going to sell, and people are going to live there. Guess what? First mistake with Point Gloria was no balconies on a waterfront. All right, who wants to buy it?
If somebody did buy the penthouse apartment, I actually knew the individual because he was on a Heritage State Park board when I was on many years ago.
Yeah, and I'm sure he wanted to really live there after they let
him. After he paid an outrageous amount for one of the top floor apartments. As soon as they started moving Section 8, and he took a huge loss.
Right.
But this is what happens. This is what happens, and we wonder why this community can never grow. We see all the other communities that have improved their economy, have improved their quality of life, and the first thing they do is eliminate the glut of low-income housing. Because what happens is we have become a magnet now, because all these other communities are cutting their low-income housing, and what they do is they divert everybody, not only from this state, but from other states, and you know that well. And what does this do? This doesn't help business. These people don't have a lot of money. Most of them are living below the poverty level. And then what happens? It's a catch-22. And they continue to tell us that we need MOA. And look, we've said time and time again, we're not conspiracy theorists here. But the fact is, it's pretty obvious that they want to keep Fall River, they can say what they want, but they want to keep Fall River exactly the way it is. Poor
and undeserving.
And undeserving of any consideration by
Right.
Boston, because what do? If you're a multimillionaire right now sitting on the beach in Fort Lauderdale or West Palm Beach, probably even more so, because West Palm Beach and that's very affluent, but they're sitting on the beach now and they're going, oh, well, I got, 400 units. Now, once I get most of the people in there from the state, I'm going to get like $1,200 a unit or $2,000 a unit, and it's guaranteed money. They're not going to miss their rent because the state pays me. And it's a great business. And isn't it great to have a business that is not affected when people are poor? You actually have a reverse economic going on in Fall River, where the people who make the money in Fall River actually make the money because they make it from the people who can't spend money, because they get state money. They get money from nonprofits. Check some of these rich people and their rental properties and see how many units are occupied by subdivisions of a nonprofit called South Coast. And see how many of their units are now rented. So they rent to people who are connected. They bring in low-income housing, and it's totally irrelevant that the rest of this city is dying, because if you run a regular business, you need people who actually have a job and have money to spend, because nobody's going to go out to eat without money. And yet they do it time and time again. They ignore everything. And we have the Herald News, a reporter, well, CJ can confirm. She basically said, well, we don't really have that many poor people in Fall River. Really? Where have you been? I mean, for God's sakes, if you go to most of these high-rises and most of these units, 40, 50% of the units are subsidized housing. People look at, they try to fix this problem with tourism, which is a joke. And then they want to bring people in to live, and they've got all these grandiose ideas of how to bring people into this city. Who wants to come to a city that's got 30 or 40% of its people living below the poverty level, and it's got high crime and all these other things, and they got this propaganda machine that they just continue to say, we're moving forward, we've got a plan. Well, you've had a plan for 20 years, and anybody that's lived in this city for any length of time knows that this city is a disaster compared to what it was 20 years ago. And look at the people who own real income property. It's driven their rents down. Their taxes go up, their fees go up, their cost of maintaining their properties goes up. Yet now, in order to get any kind of decent tenant, we've got the lowest rents, probably in one of the lowest rent areas in Massachusetts. If you've got a decent home and you have apartments, you basically got to give them away, because there's so many rental units in this city. It's like you see empty apartments. That's why you see everybody selling their units. It's crazy. And what irritates me more than anything else is it's like, and then they pretend they didn't know. Like, this is a big revelation. They go, oh, really? Really? There's Section 8 moving in? Well, let's build another one that says we're not bringing Section 8 in. And that's what upsets me. And, Carlos, if they made a mandate they may be able to get that mandate of below, nobody under 55 or under 65. But then when you get to the subsidized housing, you have to deal with the law. But the reality is, I'm not going to worry about 55 and 65-year-olds. It's the 25 and 22-year-olds they're bringing in by the busload and the truckload from all over the country, not only Massachusetts. And then those same clowns sit in the city council chamber and pretend that they can't figure out what's wrong with the city, when the report The report from the college down south said it. Everybody knows what the problem is. And the first step is to cut some of this housing down. Stop giving TIFs to people who are going to bring more problems into the city, but they're rich.
But I can see even being a problem 2 and 3 generations from now, because my oldest daughter are starting college this year, so I know I'm starting to feel how much cost education. So we have families that they cannot afford to put kids into college. We have families having 2 kids a year, okay? 2 kids a year. They have 5 kids, and the oldest one is 5. They ain't even hit age of school. So right there, by the time those kids are old enough to go to college, how are we going to put those kids to college? You know, how much going to cost? So it's like the problem is not just today. The problem, we're creating a problem for generations.
You know, I've spoken many times over. If you look at what we called welfare at one time, then it's changed its name to TADFDC, AFDC. It's generational. We're up to our 7th generation now receiving welfare, food stamps, mass health, which we called Medicaid at one time. And it's a problem. But enough on the housing thing, because we gotta get out of this, because I'm getting a headache from it. Let's talk about bags and sanitation fees. The sanitation bills didn't go out. You know why the sanitation bills didn't go out? Because the judge, here come the judge, said, why are we piecemealing this? I mean, this might be the first logical thing I've ever heard come out of corporate counsel office. Why are we piecemealing this? We still don't have an ordinance to enforce for using the purple bags. We have a legal authority now saying that you do not have to pay for the purple bags because the city doesn't have an ordinance. Do you notice that nobody spoke about the fact that when this went to court and people challenged it, they were all thrown out? The city hasn't collected a dime on the citations they issued. How come? Because there's no law. So yes, people of Fall River, it's in the Herald News. Jamie Tyrell in his crazy blog wrote about it. All the local media sources are talking about it. The bags are not legal. Wait a minute, Mr. Mayor. I think you turned around and said they were legal at one time.
Oh, no, wait a minute, CJ. Didn't he say that it's legal?
Legal until challenged in court.
But it was challenged.
That's right.
But the other problem is, remember, there's always with politicians, there's always a fallback position. And their fallback position is, well, even if it's not legal, you should buy them.
That's right.
Help the city. Like the city's helping us.
Right.
They're helping us right to the poorhouse.
That's it.
So you know what I got to say about helping the city? I privatized. That's what I had about that's how I help.
But you know, this is funny. I mean, we have a new corporate counsel who, I mean, for the most part, has supported everything the mayor has said. But he's saying, why are we piecemealing this? We can't send the bills out. And here's the kicker. They already printed the bills to mail out. So now we're going to have to pay to print the bills again.
Yeah, well, you got to realize one thing.
Recycle those.
We're going to recycle. But you got to remember one thing. You know, you got Joe Macy, who used to be a judge. Now, so here come the judge. But of course, when he's hired as corporation counsel, he's no longer a judge. It's his job to make ridiculous opinions to support city positions.
Right.
But there comes a line even for a corporation counsel, maybe not our old corporation counsel, but a corporation counsel who used to be a judge. He realizes that if he says that it's legal and it isn't legal, that when they go to court and they lose, everybody's going to go, how did this con ever become a judge?
Right.
He does, I mean, so I think he was almost forced to render that opinion because it's his opinion. And when they go to court, the judge in court will go, Mr. Macy, weren't you a judge? How can you say that it's enforceable with no ordinance? I mean, come on. It's like, they don't voluntarily make opinions that don't. That's what their job is, to make. And that's the other thing that people got to remember. They've also lied about, corporation counsel. They make it look like corporation counsel is like, they're like God and they're talking to Moses when they give an opinion. But you got to remember, anything a corporation counsel sends down is an opinion. And that's the only time Sam Sutter was right. If you fight it, you will determine who's right in court. A judge will determine. But any opinion rendered by a corporation counsel or a lawyer is basically their legal opinion, and they'll try to buttress that argument with some case precedents and stuff like that, as our former corporation counsel did with Dominion, and we all saw how that went. And when they were having difficulty looking up stuff, and we were sitting in the audience, and while they were talking, CJ found it in like 14 seconds on his telephone, but they couldn't find the opinion. So, I mean, so much for their, how thorough their preparation was. But the fact is, you got to remember, that's another thing that they've managed to tell that lie enough where a lot of people believe it. It's like when they go to the city council, they said, well, the corporation's council says this is like the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has just ruled. Our Supreme Court, the Corporation Council, who, you got to remember, works for the mayor. And it's his job to support any legal position or give legal basis to any opinion that the mayor takes. Regardless of how ridiculous that position is, they will come up with some argument, and that's the reason that cities lose so often. They say you can't fight City Hall, but the only reason you can't fight City Hall is most people don't have the time, the money, or the inclination to fight them on most issues because it's just not worthwhile. Look what they did to us on the recall. I mean, there was no reason to go to court on that stuff. It was, it was pretty cut and dried, but no, that's what they do. They try to wear you down and break you financially. But, again, here's the city saying that, the bags. And now, God, we said this from the get-go. Right out of the gate, but of course, they ignore everything. And this is the key. The key is that, this is what I'm saying, this is a new election cycle. Question everybody. And put people in. The people who are in have got a record. You don't have to question them. The only questions you can have of them is, why did you support the purple bags? Why did you support the TIF? Why did you do this? Then you could ask, and if you get valid answers, well, maybe you vote for them. You vote for whoever you want. But when it comes to the council, there are a lot of people running for council, 36? So you got a lot of people running for council. Question those people. Listen to what they've got to say. Take notes. They're all going to make promises, and there's nothing more you can do except try to determine who you believe the most, vote for them, put them in office. Then that's when the stuff really begins, because then if they don't live up to their promises, you get them out after the first term. It's the same thing with the office of mayor, which is a lot more difficult because you can only vote for one. You can't put 5 or 6 and say, well, I got 5 or 6 people in here, and if 2 or 3 of them come out pretty good, well, I'll throw the other 2 out. Now you're going to pick somebody that's going to run the city, and you've got to come to the conclusion of where you stand in this election. There are 5 people running for mayor in the primary, and you have to look at the reality is, if you think Sam Sutter is leading this city down the road of destruction, which I believe, and you don't have to believe it, you can be a Sam Sutter supporter. I said, look, you can vote for anybody you want. I'm going to give you my opinion, and you can take it, or you can leave it, and I'll listen to what you've got to say. And but the fact is, I think he's gone back on virtually every promise he made, and he's got to go. So I'm going to pick the candidate that I feel can lead the city and has the best chance of winning, and I'm going to do everything I can to get him out of office. And that's what everybody has to do. And as I said, it's not about me, it's not about CJ, it's not about Carlos, it's about you. We want 100% of the people in this city to come out to vote. We want every single registered voter to come out. And then even if we get the wrong candidate, and I'm not happy, I'll live with it, because I can truly say
People
the
spoke.
public spoke,
Yep.
not 16% of the people, and then the other 84% bitch for the next 2 years because who we got is the mayor. Well, you know, if you don't want to complain, get out and vote. Let's everybody get out and vote. And you know something? It is going to be a government of the people and by the people if we have most of the people vote. It may not be for the people because you may not elect the right guy, but that's something we have to live with. But the fact is, you know, it shouldn't be the three of us that show up at the polls, because then I got a complaint with all of you. If you don't show up and you don't vote, you got no complaints. And it's up to you. Let's make this an election that, you know, we had a great turnout, I mean, for Fall River in the recall. But let's add to that. Let's build to that. Let's get people out. Because you know something? The only way we can say the people have truly spoken is when the majority of the people have spoken. Because when the rest of the people are apathetic, well, this is what we get. We get a government where the same people stay in for 20 years, give you the same old line of baloney, and then they do everything wrong and they get rewarded. Because it's not about the hot dogs. Not about the chow mein sandwiches. It's about your ability to live in a city that will give you essential services and be a city you can be proud to live in. And if you allow these people to get in and forget, now they've disappeared since the budget went in. Now they're out and they're handing out hot dogs and hamburgers, and they're everywhere now. They're ubiquitous. Anywhere you see Sam Sutter, nobody could find him for his entire term in the city hall. He was in his office maybe 6 times.
Or in Cherry Web Building.
Or in Cherry Web. He was there a lot. But now everything that's happening, he's there. He's on the waterfront. He's in there. He might even go to the Flint and see Carlos and do the Shemarita or something.
But you know, Chip, the thing is, you know, because we're running out of time here, we're coming down to the end. You know, this is your fault, people. It really is, because you sold this city into the crapper, into the cesspool that we currently have. You did, because you sold it for a chow mein sandwich. That's why Fall River is the way it is. I hope that chow mein sandwich really filled your belly. And you know what? I don't want to hear about the fact that Ray Mitchell was at the Doolin Apartments saying, oh, it's beautiful, you're getting back to nature, and you're all over there taking his food, but you're screaming about the fact that back to nature means you're stepping in pigeon shit. Okay? Because it's got to stop. Hey, this weekend's a busy weekend. We have a parade. We have the Soapbox Derby. And by the way, we have our Team Straight Talk. That's why this shirt's on. They're going to be out there, all these kids, these great kids, trying to win a Soapbox Derby. We have a parade on Sunday. Expect the city to be a total logistical nightmare, as we've noticed all week down at Battleship Cove, because nobody can get their crap together. And that's really sad, because a great event like this has got to have such a logistical nightmare. So much so that people parked up here at the BCC parking lots and the buses drove them down there, but the buses stopped running at 6 o'clock last night. And they didn't finish down at the Battleship Cove until after 8, and they had no way to get back to their cars. Great job, Battleship Cove. You know how to do it.
Go ahead.
It's another. Yeah, I just want, you know, people to go out and vote. We do have options. We have 5 options. Learn about your candidates. Ask questions. You know, and make, you know, go for what they promise you they're going to do, and go out to vote. That's the message I want to put out there. Yeah. Go out and vote.
Well, and the people I want to talk to are the people who don't get bought off with a chow mein sandwich, that don't get bought off with the hot dogs. That's mostly the high rises and a couple of events. I want the people who sit in the chair and watch the news and complain all the time, and they're so apathetic they won't even get a chow mein sandwich. They just don't want to participate because they have the attitude that there's nothing I can do to change it. Well, there is. Vote. Yep. If you all got off your butts and went to the polls, things would change. Stay angry.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Monday. It's a great time, and get out there this weekend and enjoy yourself. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.